Welcome. Good evening. I'm Miss Jill, and this is In the Know. So, we're called to love our neighbor, right? And even our enemies in some facts. However, being loving doesn't always equate to agreeing with certain things or assuming that they are right or normal. So, tonight we're going to talk about something that is very controversial. Tonight, we're going to talk about what's formerly known as the Parental Rights in Education Bill. However, right now it's been cloned as the Don't Say Gay Bill. So, what is that? Let's start out and talk about what this bill encompasses briefly.
Well, what this bill encompasses, it's a Florida House Bill HB 1557. And this limits the use of or the education of gay or trans terms in the educational system in Florida, where they won't be teaching children about gay or trans subjects.
We said they.
The school system, the Florida educational system. So they're putting a ban on the ban on the use of gay or trans terms in the educational system.
Right, and I think we need to also, if you haven't heard of this bill, we need to bring up the fact that you're talking about children who are 5, 6, 7 years old. So these are very young children. So I guess I would start out by asking why this bill is something that why is it needed in the first place, and why are people throwing such a fit about this?
Well, I mean, I think what is needed because at the end of the day, a 5 or 3-year-old child is real impressionable.
Mm-hmm.
So if an adult could ask you what gender you think you are, and you can't even say your name all the way, what sense does that make? I mean, what sense does that make?
Right, but is that really going on when you say that they can't say their gender? Something provoked this,
right?
And so, as I'm thinking about it, we're talking about kindergarten through third grade, for the most part here with this particular issue. I just don't. Is this the conversation that's going on in the classroom?
Right. Right.
I think, one thing that I heard, and I know, and I can talk about my class, and we'll get to that later, but I know that they ask questions. I know that teachers ask questions, and that's a time when you have to identify yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so is it that they're saying their name, but their pronoun, I mean, they don't want to be identified as he or she, or is the teacher asking the question, are you a he or she? I mean, I guess that's the part that I need to know.
That's very interesting. Who introduced the bill and what purpose did they have to introduce the bill? But like Eric was saying, and you do have a point too, Doc V, but as Eric was saying, they're saying now, legitimately, a study came out last year or 2 years ago that they said that a child as early as 3 can tell you what gender they want to be. So it depends on where you stand. I'm sure that it's a lot of, rhetoric behind this and a lot of politics, because it is a bill that, how do you tell a child, or who says a child knows their gender? So it's gonna be interesting, and it's a lot of stuff that's behind this.
I mean, before you say what you're getting ready to say, one of the things that I do know that I heard in regards to this particular bill is that parents are concerned, parents that may be female, male, male, they're concerned that their young child in school, when asked to draw a picture of their family, won't be able to draw them anymore. So they feel like they will be erased out of society, basically.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go there because
that's one. I mean, that's one. Parents concerned.
Well, here's the funny part about it is, as far as erasing, or you asking a child that's 3, 5, kindergarten through 3rd, you asking a child to identify themselves when they really don't even know themselves.
Right.
So I mean, you how can you ask a child that young to identify themselves when they really don't know themselves? And then once you get to an older age, we all been through high school.
Mm-hmm.
We've been through college. How long did it really take us to find ourselves?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
some of us still on that journey.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you sit back and ask a 3rd grader or a kindergarten, who are you?
And it's almost not even like we're like the teachers are expected to ask now. So there's such a thing called systemic sexual grooming. And what this is basically grooming a child. So people who are opposing this bill say, well, teaching this in class acknowledges the existence. Well, no, it is a promotion to me. It's not acknowledging that this exists, because unless you've been under a rock, you know that it does exist. Mm-hmm. But no generation of children before this has been taught such ideology. Yes. Yeah. No generation before this has been taught that.
When you say hasn't been taught, you mean hasn't been taught in the school, hasn't been taught in the home?
Right, because it goes back to what you said. Like, why is this a thing? Is this something that was already being discussed in the classroom for children that little? So are you asking them, why are we even speaking? We're letting them make a choice instead of their biology and God making a choice.
Yeah. Right, I think something that has happened based off what I have observed is that a lot of teachers are coming out. A lot of parents are coming out. And so therefore they need to have this conversation. And so teachers probably feel like it's okay to talk about it because they may see my wife come into the room, right, and I introduce this woman as my wife, but yet I'm a woman. So it may confuse them. So they are open to the discussion. Okay. And I think a lot of that is because there was more people coming out and celebrated for coming out. You guys know that.
Yeah. And that's the argument the LGBT community in Florida is having. They're having that argument. But I'm a parent, and I'm the one that says, if you don't teach about God in school, if you can't mention God in school, come on now. How can you tell if you can't say I'm a Catholic, if you can't say I'm a Lutheran, you can't say I'm a Baptist in school? How can you legitimately teach that I'm gay or teach about gay in school? So I'm the one that say no, they shouldn't be doing it.
It's because people don't see gay as a religion or as a group, to join. They see it as, but they don't. People that are gay or amongst the LGBTQ community, they don't see it as something to belong to. Right. They see it as something you are, something they are.
Well, I'm gonna go this way with it. There's certain things you need to be taught at home, not in the school.
Okay, your parents are both.
Hold on,
Okay, I'm just saying when you say at home now.
Yeah, certain things need to be taught only at home, not in the schoolhouse.
Okay.
So if it's not math, reading, science, social studies,
history, Black history.
No, history. It's not Black history.
I'm just saying. I'm bringing that up because some people don't think that should be taught.
Hold on. It's history. It's American history. This is not American history.
Okay.
So it's certain things you need to teach at home, as far as
love.
As far as the gender thing, that need to be taught at home, not in a schoolhouse. Because guess what? I'm all man. And I could be teaching all the boys in my classroom is all about men. Mm-hmm. We all men.
Yes.
And I could be teaching the females the same thing. So now I'm corrupting a female's mind that you're only supposed to be a man. So you cannot sit back and teach that. That does not, matter of fact, it don't even have a course in college yet, does it?
No.
Okay, so why is it being taught in school? How can you teach something that you got a degree in? You got a teaching degree, but you want me to teach whatever.
LBG.
Yeah, you want me to teach that to my child, to a child. Yeah. Make it make sense.
Well, and people who oppose this bill are calling it downright homophobic. And I would have to ask those who oppose it, do you want classroom advocates speaking to your 4-year-old, almost giving them a choice of being a boy or girl? Again, going back to grooming, and not just in the classroom, but with books, I can't even tell you the list of books that I ran across that I was almost like appalled. So it's almost like we are programming, and when I say society, we are now choosing the gender instead of the gender just being what it is.
And a lot of times we have to be clear when we start talking about sex or gender, because sometimes people will get that confused. Mm-hmm. And to keep it sorted so that we are on the same page. When you're referring to sex, that's between the legs. When you're referring to gender, that's between the ears. So what you're thinking you are and what you're relating to, it's a totally different thing. And nowadays, some young people, and I have to say this, and you have to walk a fine and narrow line when you are connected to people like this. But when you can say factually that you observed a young person, and I'll say first grade, second grade, and it seems like they were gay, I'll say, homosexual, gay, whichever way you want to say it, but it seems like there was something and they identify as a girl, but they were a boy. What do you say to that? So you have to understand that there's something in the mind is going on here. And so you can't beat these people up. You can't beat the young people up, because what if you do see a young person in the kindergarten, every time you tell him to draw himself, you tell him to draw, he's a boy, and you say, draw a picture of yourself, and he continues to draw himself like a girl. What do you say to that? What has happened? And so you saying this stuff has to be taught at home. So what is he seeing at home that's doing that when he has a mom and a dad?
Like I said,
a female and a male.
I mean, I look at it like
role model.
You can't teach this stuff in school. It's not to be taught in school. Certain life lessons is not to be taught. But it can't, matter of fact, can't be taught in school.
But everything is not. Everything that's talked about or discussed in the classroom is not being taught in school. And that's where we have an issue, because see, the question is, can this be discussed without somebody being sued? Right. Because there's too many times that the child may bring that to the teacher and ask the question, and now the teacher has to respond.
Guess what the teacher need to respond when they ask that question.
What's the response?
Hey, you need to ask your mom and your dad.
Ask your mom and your dad.
And leave it alone.
But it's not always that simple. Because do you know how many young people, and this is just a hard fact and it's hard to swallow sometimes, but being an educator, do you know how many children do not communicate honestly with their parents?
Well, I mean,
do you know that a lot of people in the LGBTQ community feels threatened most of the time, and they are suicidal? And we can look at some statistics. Just in the last year, it was 42% that considered or attempted suicide. Wait a minute, because we don't want to overlook these facts, because either way, these are facts. 42%. That's a big number. How about this? They feel better when they have a community of their peers that they can communicate with, that accepts them for being who they are. They can't always talk to mom and dad. I'm sorry, I'm not a parent. I don't know what that feels like.
And I understand.
But that's a hard truth.
But at the end of the day, that is not to be taught in school. Well, that has no place in the schoolhouse.
And you're entitled to your opinion. That sounds good.
And I'm gonna get to a point that both of y'all make. I'm gonna hit a middle ground. But we have a comment. I know we normally do this on Voice of the People, but this comment came in hot, so we're gonna address this comment right now. Melissa says, so not only have they been taught about this topic or exposed to it, when they are, it's in a negative light. So that's giving, credence to what you're saying, Doc V, a lot of negative light about it. But I want to go to something Jill said, and I really, really want you to understand that it's not negative, but it is something that is being happening. In all teaching, if you look at educational system, all teaching right now is a programmed system. It's a program system. And what do I mean a program system? It's programmed to teach you how to line up, how to, spend 8 hours sitting in the desk. It's teaching you, it's programming you to do things that, that's where, if you do the history of the education system, Ford had a lot to do with shaping the Ford company. The assembly line. He had it because he wanted them brakes. He taught them brakes. He taught them all of that because that trained the people or programmed the people to be able to go out into the workforce. And, they'll be already accustomed to it. So what I'm saying is every system, an educational system, is a program system. So what is the program behind this particular bill? Now, am I saying they're programming people to be gay or not gay? Who knows? But there's a program to our educational system. So what is the purpose of this program?
Right.
Okay. Now, before we get into the program, the purpose of the program for the educational system, I do want to point this out. So Joe Harding, who is a Republican representative in Florida, one of the things that he points out is that, first of all, the word gay is not in the bill.
Mm-hmm.
He says
It's not in
LGBTQ is not in the bill.
Mm-hmm.
What is in the bill is, and I'll read this and I'll make it really fast. Florida, you already said the rights. This is the name of the bill. So they already changed the name of the bill. So it's got they're going to ride the wave.
Give it a proper name.
Well, she already did. And so that's the Florida Parental Rights in Education Bill. And so this quote, classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in the kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with the state standards. So it sounds like they're saying you need to have appropriate conversation in the classroom based on that kid's age.
Right.
And so I'm just saying, so when you look into that, and then of course you can jump in on one when you see the word sexual, you see the word gender, and then that's when you start saying, okay, this is about us. But the truth is, you should not talk about certain things based on age. And so if I was a parent, I would be saying, okay, now what are y'all talking about?
And as an educator, it doesn't that put you, because that's leaving it up to you to decide what is age appropriate, at which stage is this child developed. And even another part of the bill states that parents will be able to sue the school if they feel their child has been exposed to topics pertaining to gender identity and LGBTQ plus that interfere with their parenting. Who is going to monitor that? Who is going to enforce that?
Right. And they're also saying that the school system can sue. And so I'm saying, so everybody need to know what's going on with this bill. And the facts are, and I'll go to what E said, I do agree that a lot of things should be taught at home. But what I'm saying is when you go beyond that, because I talk to my students talk to me. And when you have a student that come to you that's been crying and says to you, I couldn't sleep all night, I was thinking about, committing suicide or hurting myself, it changes the perspective on a lot of things. And one of the things you do not do is judge. No matter what that student's sexual preference is, you're not concerned about that. You're saying, okay, we need to get some help. We need to talk. Did you talk to your parents? I can't talk to my parents. Now what do you do?
Well,
when a kid says to you clearly, I can't talk to my parents.
I've been there because I used to work at the youth center. Mm-hmm. So I understand everything you're saying.
Yes.
And I've been seeing the tears, and I've seen I can't talk to my parents.
Yes.
I mean, it gets to a point where now, okay, I'm going to intervene, but I'm going to intervene in a way that I'm going to help you find some help. Okay. I'm not going to directly intervene because the simple fact, I have a job I have to do. I understand. I know my position.
Yes.
So I'm not going to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to totally jump in and dive in. No, let me go help you find help.
And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, and then get your parents involved into this all at once. And then once I get you your help, guess what I do? I'm totally out the picture. I gave you the resource. I gave you the situation. I mean, I gave you everything I can do for you. Now it's up to you to follow through and your parent.
And I I agree with that as far as a parental perspective, because it's no different than talking to your child about sex or babies or whatever. I want to be the one as a parent to decide when I want to have that conversation. So my daughter at 16 has questions right now. She has questions about pronouns because she hears it at school. She has questions about all the things that she's seeing and hearing in today's society. I am the one that's going to answer those questions. I am going to paint the picture that I want to paint. So I really think from a parent's perspective, I would be concerned. But let's talk about a different bill. Let's talk about the Don't Say God bill when it comes to this.
Well, that's the same thing. And I'm glad you hit on that, Jill. And not only in Florida do they have this bill, the parental rights bill, but they also have a similar bill in Texas that's floating around. And the bill in Texas is very similar to this. It just not haven't bubbled to the surface as this one in Florida, because I think this one in Florida is sitting on the governor's desk to be signed. So the one in Florida is trying to wait to see what this fallout is. But here's my point. as I said about programming, and we're going to talk about oppression in our tomorrow's subject. And this is why I want to bring this up. We got to be very, very careful about what we do and what we think. Because our government, they only test us to see what they can get away with. And that's how oppression, most governments do the same thing. Most governments are an oppressive nature. Think about it. If we go and we push and we stand up for this Don't Say Gay bill, that's not the name of it. Mm-hmm. But as we're talking about the critical race, don't forget, 2 months ago, this was the critical race theory conversation. Mm-hmm. Several years ago, this was a Don't Say God conversation. Absolutely. So they're figuring out what they can take away from us, what they can oppress us with. If we fight and do this one, the next one, it's going to be easier for them to take the critical race theory out of the classroom. Mm-hmm. It's already been easy to take God out the classroom. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we got to be careful. Now, do I agree with this? Yes.
When you say yes, and what do you agree with?
Don't say, the parental rights, and now you're not teaching a 4 or 5-year-old about their sexuality. I don't think 4 and 5-year-olds should be taught about sexuality.
Exactly.
But I also don't think you should not teach about slavery and oppression and all of that. This is all one ball. All one ball.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just to be clear, in you saying that, you said you don't agree with them being taught that at a young age in school, right? Right. So my question to you, very simply, if your child was in, or your son was in class and drew himself with a dress on, do you want to know? Do you want that teacher to call you and tell you, or to show you these pictures?
Yeah, because I'm going to be like, me and my son going to have a conversation.
Okay, and then when he has to tell stories about himself, he always identifies as a girl. You want to know?
Yes.
And so the teacher, you want them to do what?
I want them to tell me. I don't want the teacher to talk to him about it.
You don't want her to say a word.
No.
Just call you.
Just call me.
Okay, I just want to put that out there so that your stance on that was clear.
So what I'm saying is, and you got to be careful, because this is an oppressive bill, and that's what we're going to talk about, oppression. Think about it. Don't be so quick to jump on bandwagons, because what freedom you're willing to fight against might be the freedom you're willing to lose.
Exactly.
That's right. I agree with that.
Right.
And it's easy to have the conversation when you're not in the school system, especially a public school system like myself, and when you don't, when you're not facing these teenagers and these young people in this situation on a regular basis. I have several students, and I have to deal with students that are gay on either side all the time. And one thing I can tell you, they are very free, they are very open, and they are very out, as they say. And I'm saying maybe they're starting young because they want to either stop it from going on. I'm saying maybe that's why the bill is going on. They don't want it to continue on through high school. And I think this is something that we need to continue to watch and see what happens and have further discussion on.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. But we do want to thank you for being with us. And as Clarence said, tomorrow we will be talking about oppression as a whole. So we hope to see you then.